Welcome to Soil Camp Podcast. This podcast was produced and recorded with the support of the amazing CJSW Campus and Community Radio, found at 90.9 on the FM dial or at cjsw.com. As the soil is fundamental to the existence and well-being of the entire food web, so is acknowledging the land fundamental to Soil Camp. We give thanks to the Indigenous peoples who have cared for and lived with and on the land since time immemorial, and who continue to tend to the more than human relationships here in Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge the Blackfoot or Niitsitapi Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Ayahe Nakota Nations, Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney, and the Tsuut'ina Nation, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. In this podcast series, we are diving into some of the rich and fertile topics that Soil Camp explores, weaving conversations among various soil campers and participants. We hope listeners will feel welcomed into an inclusive space of connections, questions, and ideas. Like the soil itself, we are a dynamic community of diverse beings, and we all need each other to thrive. This conversation was recorded remotely over Zoom with people using whatever technology they had available and in the context of their homes. So we thank you for your understanding if you hear any background noises or other distractions. My name is Son Edworthy, and I'm honored and excited to be co-hosting with Sophia Thraya, who will introduce herself in a minute, and she'll be sharing about her work about translanguaging at Soil Camp and beyond. And also joining us in this episode are two very special guests and collaborators, Liana Wolfleg and Anita Chowdhury, and they will be also introducing themselves in a minute. But let's hear from Sophia about translanguaging.
Thank you, Son, for that lovely introduction. It's so great to be in this space with you all today. As Son mentioned, my name is Sophia Thraya. I'll give myself a little bit of an introduction before I dive in. I am a PhD student in educational research in learning sciences at the Workland School of Education at the U of C. And a lot of my work really tries to challenge colonial monolingual norms, working alongside racialized multilingual children at Soil Camp who've experienced forced displacement. I come to this work as a daughter, sister, granddaughter, friend, and I am also someone who did my Bachelor of Education to become a teacher here in Calgary. I also was a student within the public education system. So a lot of my work kind of came from my own noticings, both as a student in the education system, but also as a teacher and educator. As I was going through the process of teacher education, there was a lot of noticings that didn't sit so right with me when it came to talking about language. So I am a multilingual person myself. I am a Canadian citizen of the Lebanese diaspora. So a lot of my experiences with languaging have been so beautiful, connecting me to stories of my family, stories of my faith, stories of my culture, that I often felt like didn't have a space in the classroom. And I often felt like I had to leave that at the door. So also speaking a highly subjugated language, Arabic, I often could feel those tensions and wanted to really see what expanding the possibilities around what languages we used for learning could mean, especially on the land. And that has really opened up so many conversations for me that I have the gift of continuing.
So I'm Liana Wolfleg. I am an educational assistant. I am a mom, and I'm an Indigenous knowledge keeper. I am Blackfoot from the Siksika Nation. My Blackfoot name is Gadaitsinabaki, which means Pine Marten Woman. And, while we're talking about soil camp and everything, it's not just translanguaging across nations, it really starts getting you to think about translanguaging across like different nations. So there had to be a way for all of us to communicate. So in previous like Indigenous ways of knowing and knowledge, we each had our own different tongue, own different speak, but we spoke through sign language and we were able to understand each other. And as we're continuing on with this and, meeting the kids who are a part of Soil Camp and bridging that gap between, where they're coming from and where we're coming from, we're learning about our similarities. And in that, we find a sense of community. So what I like to do in this role is just bring that Indigenous way of knowing and knowledge, ensuring that that is a part of our day-to-day lives.
My name is Anita Chowdhury, and I am currently a master's student in educational research from the Faculty of Learning Sciences as well. My current research really focuses on how refugee children at Soil Camp awaken critical consciousness and deepen their relationality by making sense of the invisible complexity of soil through arts integrated experiences, and more specifically through the act of soil painting, which we host on the land and with the land. I'm very honored to work with this wonderful team of people the last few years that we have run Soil Camp, and it is truly one of my passion projects. Another passion project of mine outside of Soil Camp is my work in the community. I am the branch coordinator for Mamas for Mamas Calgary. It's a national poverty alleviation organization that supports caregivers and children in need.
So listeners may be wondering, what is translanguaging? Here, Sophia introduces the concept and Liana and Anita share their experiences.
Kind of touching on translanguaging, translanguaging just refers to the very much natural and dynamic ways multilingual people use language in their day-to-day lives. So this is something that isn't something we try to introduce into this space, but rather kind of bring conversations and way of languaging that often feels like it's not welcome in learning spaces. The way that children and also our facilitators and educators and community members language in the spaces such as their homes or with friends across the divides of language into our spaces for learning. So it really tries to challenge the way that we see language, which is often really divided, kind of seeing languages as like separate systems, but really trying to make it more reflective of how people use language. So a lot of our work at Soil Camp has been really grounded in the idea of translanguaging, which was a lot of the work that I reference is by Dr. Ophelia Garcia, and also grounded in Indigenous ways of seeing languages by Indigenous scholars and also knowledge keepers and elders that we've been in discussion with, including our wonderful Liana. As many Indigenous languages really embody ways to respect ecologies and really tenderly hold relationships with land and place-based practices. And at Soil Camp, we really want to kind of reimagine the way that we see language as deeply relational. So connecting us to where we are, how we see and be and know the world, and really kind of drawing from the knowledges that each of us hold in our hearts and the languages associated with those knowledge systems.
Within the Blackfoot Confederacy, we call ourselves Nitsitapi. And we're like the Blackfoot people. We are the real people. Like we come from here. Like that's why we call ourselves Nitsitapi. But, because I'm from Siksika, the Blackfoot word for Blackfoot language is Siksikapuasin. So, we are the real people. And the Blackfoot language that we come from is the Blackfoot real language, Siksikapuasin. And having all those together, it just ties us to the land. This is our land. This is the Blackfoot land. We are from Siksika. This is our Blackfoot language. And all in all, it just ties us to, this is our home. This is where we work. This is our territory. This is our land. This is where we're ingrained. This is where, doesn't matter if you grew up in the city or if you grew up on the reserve or if you grew up, back when the residential schools were here, or if you're just starting now, you have that tie and you're planted here. You can't grow a plant without having that love and that light. Your language, your culture, your family, everything you put into there will help you grow and connect you more into that land. So, yeah, that's just what I want to share.
Had shared some questions, and we can just use them as a guide and kind of expand on them as you feel like it. And I'm also inviting any listeners to the podcast to reflect on these questions as well. So maybe starting with, what is soil to you? Like what's your relationship to soil?
Yeah, I think it is such a loaded question. It's a really big one that I think we all have to think about really deeply. But when I think about what is soil and what it means to me personally, I've always connected to soil through the act of community gardening. And that was something that I grew up with as a child. And it was kind of a feeling of healing for me as a kid. I grew up in sometimes a very dysfunctional environment in my family, which I'm sure is common amongst many families. But I found that when I was outside in the community garden with my family, touching the soil, feeling the soil, and really connecting with the earth, my inner child was always at peace. And I think I still carry that emotion and that feeling with me today when I am outside on the land. And it's something that I treasure and value deeply, because I know that not many people and many children still have access to, green spaces and soil at all times. And so when I think about soil, I really connect to those happy experiences of being with my family outside. And it's something that really led me to connecting with the team at Soil Camp and starting some work and working with children in that capacity to help them connect a little bit more deeply as well.
That's all we have time for in this episode of the Soil Camp podcast. Check out the Translanguaging episode part 2 to hear the rest of the conversation. Big thank you to Sophia, Liana, and Anita for sharing your wisdom and experiences. And big thanks to CJSW at cjsw.com and the Soil Camp Project at soilcamp.ca.